Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman. Our next guest joining us is Dr. Amber Bartlett, founder and CEO of StrengthPoint Consulting. Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I will say maybe a parallel entrepreneur because you also have another business you're involved in, the Barker House, and maybe we can talk about both of them. I think
Yeah.
our listeners and viewers can see in the background that you're dog obsessed. And
Just a little
so
bit.
tell us, why don't we start by telling us a little bit about StrengthPoint Consulting and what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, StrengthPoint Consulting, my main focus is working with business owners, CEOs, leaders, up to probably 50 employees, on really closing the virtual gap. And what that means is, I think we can all agree if we're in the industry or in the talent world at all, there is this huge, since the pandemic, conversations that continue to happen around virtual or remote work. Does it work? Is it harder? How do we have conversations differently? Companies are now, hey, this isn't working. Let's all go back to the office, which makes employees say, whoa, I'm kind of enjoying my remote work over here. And so, I have the programs and the consulting, and it's all around that. It's really building or like understanding what a virtual culture really is. And then how do we build that so that you actually have a productive and collaborative and connected team that's getting done what needs to be done, but in a fulfilled way. And, helping people to understand that it's not virtual isn't harder, it's just different. And if we can understand the psychology behind a lot of that, it becomes much more of a smooth sail.
So, what are the common challenges that you see? Obviously, out of sight, out of mind is probably one of them that happens.
Yeah.
I would imagine some of the teams suffer from "I thought I told you that" syndrome,
Yes.
or we had that conversation. So, is there a
Yeah.
deliberateness that needs to happen in terms of making sure that you are going through the effective communication?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that question because you really hit it. It's being intentional. I know even for me, I can tend to be a wing it kind of person. But when it comes to working virtually, especially around communication, it does have to be very intentional. Like you said, we're not in front of each other, right? We're not in the same room. We can't stop at the water cooler and talk about what our weekend looked like. And so instead, we have to make sure that we're creating those opportunities and we're, making sure that our employees, if I'm a leader, I want to make sure that my employees know that they're going to have time to talk to me. So it's, scheduling regular one-on-ones, every week or biweekly, whatever works for your team, but just making sure that they always know that they can reach me, that they have this time with me. And even I think technology is a big piece of it too, making sure that we have the technology pieces in place to be able to easily communicate on the fly, since instead of the water cooler, if I have a quick comment or something I want to share with you, I can message you or, I can send you a quick video snippet or something. So technology does play a role in it. Even when it comes to, like you were saying, if we're working on a project and it's like, but I told you that deadline, like we knew that deadline. The more that we can have processes set up and technology implemented, the less risk we have of those things falling through the cracks because we have those things in place that allow us to stay in touch, keep up to date, with that sort of thing. But I think, the communication thing is interesting to me because that I focused a lot on the psychology of communication. So, as you mentioned, I have a doctor in psychology because I'm a total human behavior nerd, and that's what I enjoy studying and understanding. And communication, we don't interact with another human, right? Without communicating. Like communication is a part of our day-to-day life. And
Right.
so that's why I always like to say why virtual communication, it isn't harder, it's just different. And, there's a lot of even parallels between in-person and virtual communication, even like in the approach that you take, with your conversations, right? I'm a big proponent, especially with my virtual teams when I'm working with them. They don't always have to be on camera, but if we're having a conversation, if I need to speak to them about a specific, situation or topic or address anything, I want them on camera because then they can see my body language. I can see their body language. Are they understanding what I'm saying? Are their eyes glazing over? Are they fidgeting? So, I think I'll stop rambling on that piece, but it's all around, just being intentional with the structure of your communication, the tools that you're using, the technology that you're implementing. If there's certain pieces that if you can get into place, you're going to have way less struggle.
And it's really interesting you mentioned that because there are the technology tools and the technology can become frustrating for people too. I'll use a
Mhm.
couple of examples in my life that happen, and in personal life and business life. People who use audio text, text, talk to text.
Yes.
Well, read the text before you send it because, as good as Siri is, I'm sitting here scratching my head saying, I have no idea what you're talking about, and I
Yeah.
think people
Yeah.
people are moving so fast and moving through so many different things. One of my personal least favorite things is the single word text.
Oh
Don't
my
send me
word.
seven things, seven texts, and that amount to a sentence. Send me,
Yeah.
take the time to send
One
me one
sentence.
text. And I think that there's a lot of people that don't get basic
Yeah.
communication etiquette. And I would imagine that in a lot of your client organizations, setting those rules and trying
Mhm.
to get people to adhere to those rules would make things go a lot more smoothly.
Yes.
Because as you can imagine, I'm in a meeting and somebody says I'll be 20 minutes late. I don't need that in seven different texts going bing, 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 bing. Um, I, you know,
Exactly.
take the
Yeah.
time, slow down, get it all out, send it in one text, makes it a lot more efficient and a lot more tolerable. So
Yeah,
I
no,
would
absolutely.
imagine you see a lot of that where people are using things that are intended to be helpful, but can actually become annoying.
Yes, no, and that's putting it nicely. Yes. And I think, you really hit on it again, where it really comes down to expectations, right? So, and I coach my clients on this all the time, especially think about the generation that's coming into the workforce now versus the generations that are there now, right? We have very different experiences, very different cultural, very different technology, very different, just, expectations. And so, especially in today's world, it becomes so much more important to set those expectations. One of my least favorite, do not text me back with a letter. Like if you want to text me back and say, okay, write okay. Don't send me back a K. That drives me absolutely nuts. So, but
Well,
and it
that's
sounds
clearly
te-
generational. Sometimes I get things from either business associates and or my kids' generation. I have to look at and say, okay, let me sound this out. What does it
yeah.
sound like?
I know. And I have felt like such a dummy because they'll send me this acronym and I have to look it up on Google. I'm like, what does this even mean? So yeah, it sounds tactical and it sounds, kind of silly where you're like, do I really need to spell that out? But you do, especially in a virtual environment because you're not right there. And so I need to clarify, just like you, hey, I don't mind text. You can use text, but send me one text with one message. I don't want to see seven different texts. Or, hey, if we're talking about this topic, try to use email for this topic versus instant message, right? Because instant message is for a quick message. It's not to tell me something I need to do because it's going to miss my list if it's not in my email. So those are just two examples. But I think conceptually, what you're hitting on is you really do have to be intentional about setting your expectations, setting your boundaries. Otherwise, no one's on the same page and you're just asking for frustration when you could avoid it by just simply stating what your expectation is.
But by the way, the text manufacturers figured out that you can link messages. So if you send me four different texts and four different subjects, and I haven't answered them, and I actually link one to the response, then we're connected. So it's I
Yeah.
think people just don't know how to use the technology
Mm-hmm.
and stream of consciousness, right? Because as you said,
Yes.
it's all going on in my head, so it makes logical sense. The problem
Mm-hmm.
is, I may have 12 things going on in addition to that. So
Exactly.
really, really
Exactly.
sound advice. Let's shift gears because I want to give an opportunity. You have also doggy daycare, dog sitting, a grooming business called the Barker House. Tell
Yes.
us how you got started. That predated your work in communications and organizational help.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. I mean, working on both parallel, but I took the jump with the Barker House first. So just kind of a funny story. It goes all the way back to remember, like I think it was '08 when the market crashed and so many people got laid off. And I was living in Boston at the time. And I got laid off, from my position. And I'm just kind of wandering around my Boston neighborhood. And I already had dogs, love dogs, and I started seeing all these dogs. And people would be like, hey, who do you use for a dog walker? And I'm like, well, myself. I just walk my own dogs. I don't use. And it just, after a few people asked me, I'm like, look, I'm not employed. I have dogs. I'm outside anyway. I'll just start dog walking. So I literally, it was back in the days, before technology. So I was hanging the paper thing with the tabs
With the
that you
tear
ripped
offs,
off.
with the
I
tear
know.
off
Yes.
sides. Yep.
I'm totally
I've
aging myself,
responded to
but
many of those.
I know, at the laundromat or whatever. So anyway, long story short, I decided to just start doing it. I threw a flyer out. Within a year, I had grown to over 100 clients. I had full-time staff. It was bizarre. And people still wrote, they were like, "What do you do for a living?" I'm like, "Oh, I own a dog walking." I'm from the South. It's a very different culture down there. Like, dogs go in the backyard, they don't get walked. So my family would be like, "That's not a business. Like, that doesn't make any sense." And I was like, "No, it really
Oh,
is."
yes, it is.
Yeah, it's actually a good business. But anyway, so did that for a while. I decided it was time in my life. I was done with the city. I wanted, a quieter pace of life. So I ended up selling that business. And then now when I moved, so now I'm on the South Shore, and it just, I still have the love of dogs. I have 5 of my own. I can't seem to not have dogs. It's just, I just love them. And again, I just kind of saw an opportunity in my area where we didn't really have, a dog daycare where I could take my dogs, or boarding where I felt safe, because these were my kids at the time. And so again, my serial entrepreneur brain just said, well, there's a need and there's not one. Let's just do it. Let's just start it. And so that's how it started. Did my market research, all the business stuff that I had to do, obviously. But yeah, it panned out amazingly. I found a property, it had a building on it. We renovated. We do daycare, daily daycare, boarding overnight, grooming, training. And I think people it's more of a rural environment. So it kind of feels homey and cozy when you drop your dogs off. And it's your one-stop shop, because you can go to one place. We know your dog, we know your family. Like, it's, we really get to know you. And
No,
yeah, it just bloomed. This is our 4th year open, and it has been amazing. We've reached capacity several times and have to keep expanding. So yeah, it's been amazing. Really fun.
fantastic. Well, as we all know, people spend a lot of money on their pets, and they
Oh
are
goodness.
family members, and it's wonderful to hear that you've had such tremendous success in both your businesses. Uh,
Yeah.
Dr. Amber Bartlett, tell us if people want to get in touch with you, learn more about StrengthPoint Consulting, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I would honestly say LinkedIn is probably the best and the fastest way. You can find me very easy, Dr. Amber Bartlett, on LinkedIn. Or also you can go to my website, which is strength-point.com.
And if people want to learn more about the Barker House, what's the best way for them to reach out? Probably have to get in touch with you early, because it sounds like capacity is an issue.
Yeah, yeah. Get on the books early. The name of the business is the Barker House. So if you go to the website, barkerhousedogs.com, everything's there and you can reach out to us really easy. We do text, phone call, email, whatever works.
Fantastic. An expert in communication, Dr. Amber Bartlett, founder and CEO of StrengthPoint Consulting. It's been a pleasure having you on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
And we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.